The New York Rangers must make good use of the number 12 overall pick in the NHL draft. Today, we are looking at some towering, hard-hitting, high-energy players that this team desperately needs.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1325 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So just going to jump right into it here today, taking a look at three more candidates that the Rangers could potentially select with the number 12 pick in this year's NHL draft. And yes, full disclosure, I realize there is a chance that the Rangers do not hang on to the number 12 pick. They owe the Penguins their first round pick either this year or next year. We'll see what they decide. I still lean toward, in my preference at least, the Rangers giving up this year's pick, but I feel like the Rangers are going to do the opposite. I think they might actually keep the number 12 pick this year and end up giving the Penguins their unprotected pick next season. But with all that said, we got three candidates to look at, and all this is going to build to a couple rounds of mock drafts that we're going to do here on Locked On New York Rangers. But we begin with our first candidate of today's show for the number 12 overall pick for the Rangers this season, and that's going to be defenseman, Radim Mrtka for the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL. We've gone kind of WHL heavy in these episodes. We've taken a look at different candidates that the Rangers could pick at number 12. That's just a coincidence. That's just kind of something that I happen to notice here today while I was putting this episode together. But Mrtka, turning 18 years old a little bit later this month, 6'5", 205 pounds. Now, full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure that Mrtka is going to be there when the Rangers draft at number 12. The other two players that we're going to discuss a little bit later today, to me, seem at least slightly more likely to be available at 12. But you never know how this is going to go. All it takes is one team really liking a player or, a player unexpectedly falling. You never know what can happen. Bottom line, though, it could go either way with Mrtka. There are 15 publications listed on his Elite Prospects page that I've got in front of me right now. Mrtka is ranked as high as number 9 and as low as number 16. So it's very consistent to have that many different opinions, and they all have him between 9 and 16 in the draft. That gives you a pretty good idea of where he's largely expected to go. And of course, the Rangers picked 12th. 9 of the 15 publications have him ranked at number 12 or worse. So if we go by this, it's more likely than not, at least slightly more likely than not, that he's there for the Rangers. My only concern is that given that Mrtka is a defenseman and a very large one at that, this is somebody that I think could be appealing to a lot of different teams. And like I said, all it would take is one team to pounce. One of the 11 teams in front of him, in front of the Rangers, to pick Mrtka, and then the Rangers are out of luck if he's their guy. So, but if he is there, the size is the first thing that you obviously notice. It's plain as day. He's not even 18 yet. Yeah, he still goes 6'5", 205 pounds. So he's got that going for him. We know that. Beyond that, said to be very rangy, very mobile, especially for his size. Obviously, one of the bigger players available in this year's draft, and kind of just a do-it-all, very well-rounded defenseman, which for somebody that might go in the top 10, you pretty much expect that to be the case. But going by all these different scouting reports that I've been looking at, they seem to feel really good about his all-around game. Just a bona fide two-way defenseman, said to have a very high hockey IQ. That phrase gets thrown around a lot, admittedly, when it comes time to the NHL draft, whether it's this podcast or any other podcast or any article that you might read. Pay attention to how often you hear that phrase, that this guy has a very high hockey IQ. I'm not saying that it makes it any less true for Mrtka here, but that is a phrase that gets kicked around pretty freely. I just want to see one scouting report one day, any publication, any player, where they say, very low hockey IQ, doesn't really know what he's doing out there, probably not going to work out. I just want to see that one time. But for what it's worth, Mrtka is said to have a very high hockey IQ. And in this case, in the case of Mrtka, said to have a high hockey IQ at both ends of the ice. So there is that. Also a very good puck handler and able to contribute on the power play as well as the penalty kill. Now, I always like those Swiss Army knife kind of players. It's one of the biggest reasons I was interested in Vincent Trocheck when he became a free agent, 3 years ago or whatever it was. Just those guys that do a little bit of everything, can be out there in any situation at any point in the game. And in the case of Mrtka here, able to excel on both the power play and the penalty kill. As far as his numbers, he played 43 games for Seattle, this season in the WHL. 3 goals, 32 assists. He was a +10. Also, 3 assists in 6 playoff games. Not too shabby at all for his first season in the WHL. He also represented Czechia at the World Juniors. 5 games there, 1 goal, 3 assists, and was a -2. I would think that his plus-minus is probably skewed because Czechia is not usually like one of the favorites in that tournament. Be that as it may, it's a small sample size either way. I will say, though, as far as like any negatives that you want to throw out there, Mrtka having only 3 goals in 43 games with Seattle is probably not a coincidence. Now, on one hand, I realize he's a defenseman. He's not going to score as many goals as some of the top-rated forwards that are available in this year's draft. But that is said to be a weakness of him, that his just doesn't have that great of a shot, at least not yet. So 3 goals probably sounds about right. It also sounds like he does play a physical game, but there could be some room for some improvement there as well as he continues to essentially grow into his body here. Entirely possible, going by different mock drafts that I've looked at, different things that I've read, that Mrtka ends up being the second defenseman off the board at this year's NHL draft. Matthew Schaefer is going to go before he does, but a lot of mock drafts that I've looked at anyway have Mrtka as the second defenseman off the board. And that goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, just the idea that, whether he's going to be there for the Rangers or not, again, the fact that he's a defenseman, a towering defenseman, and the fact that any of these 11 teams in front of the Rangers, could be interested in drafting a defenseman, that could pave the way to him, being off the board a little bit quicker than some people might expect. I hope that doesn't happen because Mrtka, from what I've read about him, I do like him. He is pretty high on my wish list, so I hope he's still there. I hope he's at least an option for the New York Rangers. He'd probably be one of my favorites. I like the idea of drafting a defenseman. If I'm going by just position strictly, defenseman's pretty high up there because the cupboard's getting a little bit bare. There's some current Ranger defensemen that are facing some uncertain futures with the team for sure. Could go either way for a lot of these different players. Miller, Schneider, Jones. Susie at best will be here for one more season. How many of these guys are in it for the long haul? The only one we really know for sure is Fox, and I guess Borgen, because he did just sign that 4-year extension. But there is some uncertainty when it comes to the Ranger blue line. So I don't mind the idea of, stocking up on some defensemen in this year's draft. And in particular, this number 12 pick, if the Rangers do indeed keep it. But as far as Mrtka goes, I'll leave you guys with a couple of different scouting reports here. Obviously, these individuals do this for a living, and they tend to really know what they're talking about. This one comes to us from Sam Cosentino from Sportsnet. Has adjusted seamlessly to playing in North America despite fits and starts just after his arrival. The blend of size, skating, and puck-moving ability in a right-shot defenseman is extremely rare. And then we've got this one from Stephen Ellis from the Daily Faceoff. Mrtka has size and some decent creativity, making it difficult to beat him down the middle. Mrtka's skating needs to improve to take the next step in his game, but I like that he's playing more than 25 minutes a night in the WHL. Yeah, total workhorse. It really does sound that way for Mrtka there, and obviously one of the best defensemen in the WHL, if not the best. And as far as his skating goes, I've kind of seen mixed reports on that one. Some seem to think it's pretty good, or I guess maybe what they're saying in some cases is that it's good for somebody his size, but at least for Ellis here, you'd like to see that element of his game improve a little bit. And then we've got Tony Ferrari from the Hockey News. The hulking right shot defender is quite mobile for his size, and he uses that to impact the game at both ends of the ice. In his own end, he will finish his checks along the wall and use his length to dislodge puck possession. So like I said, obviously a giant towering defenseman. It seems to be a very well-rounded defenseman as well. And there's a lot to like here when it comes to Mrtka. I think he's somebody that they should strongly consider if he's still hanging around by the time the Rangers pick at number 12. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Going to shift our attention to a towering and fast-rising center. He might be the fastest rising prospect in this year's draft. Was initially looked at as a second rounder, maybe even a third rounder. And at this point, I don't think anybody's going to be too surprised if he goes right around number 12 for the New York Rangers. Maybe even before that, maybe a little bit later than that. But again, a fast-rising prospect, an exciting prospect, and we will discuss him in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I gotta have those no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they are always an awesome go-to. The satisfying crunch of opening each shell, it is like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, to keep everything moving here on Locked On New York Rangers, got to give a big shout out to the everydayers as always for sticking with this podcast all the way through the season, the offseason, all that good stuff. The mock draft episode, the long-awaited mock draft episode, is still on the way. Feel like I'm getting a pretty good feel for the players that are going to be available around number 12 for the Rangers. And now we got to look at the rest of the draft, the middle rounds. Rangers don't have a second rounder, but got to look at some guys that might go in the third round and then the later rounds as well. Definitely looking forward to getting that episode out for you guys as well. But for right now, let's go ahead and keep the focus on pick number 12 for the New York Rangers and another candidate that I think they should strongly consider if he is still available, and that would be Jack Nesbitt, 18-year-old center for the Windsor Spitfires of the OHL. 6'4", 183 pounds, so kind of a lankier player available in this year's draft, but power forward all the way. I think he'll be there for the Rangers, but again, there are no guarantees when it comes to the NHL draft. He is said to be, as I mentioned, a very fast-rising prospect. Case in point, this was interesting to me. So NHL.com, there was an article released not too long ago that was written by Adam Kimmelman and Mike Morial, and they made picks for the first 16 teams that are going to be picking in the first round. Basically, a mock draft, the first half of the first round of the draft. And Morial has Nesbitt going at number 10 to the Ducks, and Kimmelman actually has Nesbitt going at number 12 to our New York Rangers. And that's a relatively new article, like I said. In contrast, you go on his elite prospects page, and it paints a picture of somebody who's not going to go that high. They have him ranked. There's 12 publications there on his elite prospects page. They have him ranked as high as number 17 and as low as number 56. And as recently as October, Nesbitt was seen as a second or third round pick by NHL Central Scouting. So he has been rising exponentially as the weeks and months have gone by here. Part of the reason for that, I think, was him gutting out a Game 7 appearance. Basically, he was sick as a dog. He was dealing with just about every symptom that you can think of. Headache, sore throat, stomach ache, ended up having strep throat, took an IV and played in the game. He's obviously playing for the Spitfires, and they were up against the Kitchener Rangers in the second round. Kitchener won the game in overtime, but it is worth pointing out that Nesbitt did have the assist on his team's lone goal. So obviously he gutted it out there, and he made no bones about it. It's the playoffs. It's time to go. There's no conversation to be had. I'm dressing and I'm playing in this game. So you love hearing things like that. But he just, in general, had a monster season. It goes far beyond just that one game. Last year, which was his first with Windsor, 58 games, 9 goals, 9 assists, just 18 points, and also a minus 32. So this was not somebody that was really making any waves. Barely a blip on anybody's radar as far as being a first-round draft pick for the NHL. I mean, obviously I didn't see him play. I didn't watch all 58 of those games, but you just go by those numbers there, and there's nothing that screams, okay, future NHL first-round pick, right? But then this year, like I said, one of the more improved players in this year's draft class, 65 games, 25 goals, 39 assists for a total of 64 points. So essentially a point per game player, also a plus 12. That is a turnaround of 44 goals as far as his plus minus from the year before. So obviously that's big time as well. And another goal and 9 assists in 12 playoff games for Windsor. And my understanding, part of the reason for this turnaround, obviously he deserves all the credit, but the team around him got quite a bit better. They were not a playoff team the year before. If they were, they barely just got in. And this year, I want to say they were second in their division. And like I said, a lot more talent around him. But that's okay. He took advantage of it. And obviously, look, I mean, he's out there doing the work too. So very, very impressive second season in Windsor for Nesbitt. My understanding is that his skating is still something of a concern, and not necessarily the fastest player available in this year's draft, which does go somewhat hand in hand with the skating. But beyond that, there aren't too many negatives. There aren't too many red flags. Very physical player who takes advantage of his size. Apparently, he recently had a growth spurt. And again, we use this this expression we were talking about Mrtka just a second ago, but still kind of growing into his body a little bit. But be that as it may, does go out there and take advantage of his frame. Said to be very coachable, a high character player, a good teammate who will stick up for his teammate, fight when the occasion calls for it. Very high compete level. I love hearing that. That's one of those things that should honestly go without saying. But the Ranger compete level, I'll be as nice as I can about this right now. It left something to be desired this past season on a game-by-game basis. So I want some grinders. I want some guys that are going to go out there and fight and, leave it all on the ice every single night, because there was not nearly enough of that with the Rangers this past season. Also a very good shot. Also, he is willing to get to the front of the net. And that's major points for me as well, because when you think back to what the Rangers did this past season, was there any team in the NHL that had a worse ratio when it came to causing havoc in front of the opposition's net while also defending their own net, protecting the front of their own net? I don't know that any team in the NHL did it worse than the Rangers. And I don't know if there's really a way to measure that, but how often do you remember the Rangers really causing chaos in front of the opposing net? How many dirty goals do you really remember? And on the flip side of that, opposing teams basically just set up shop and did whatever they wanted right in front of the Ranger net. So that has to change. And this is somebody that, again, sounds like he will get to the front of the net and will park himself once he's there. He also is said to pride himself on going into the corners and fighting for pucks. And again, sign me up for this. Ranger fans, we are all so starved for a player like this. And I think a lot of you listening to this would probably agree with me on that. I'll leave you with a couple of scouting reports on Nesbitt. This one comes to us from Neutral Zone. Jack Nesbitt is a prototypical power forward center with an impressive combination of size, skating ability, and a developing offensive skill set. At 6'4", his frame and reach make him a challenging matchup for opponents, especially when he uses his body to protect the puck rather than exposing the puck, trying to make high-risk plays. That last sentence sounds awesome as well, because, again, how many times did we talk about this past season? The Rangers are kind of one and done in the offensive zone. You get one chance, and then it's going the other way. There's a dangerous rush for the opposition on which they likely score, or at least get a very good scoring chance and get bailed out by one of the goalies, do the Rangers. But, yeah, I mean, I like the idea of somebody that can extend offensive zone possessions. There wasn't nearly enough of that this season either, and it sounds like just by the simple fact that this dude is 6'4", and I forget his weight. It's written down here somewhere, but obviously a big kid and somebody that can extend offensive zone possessions by simply not giving up control of the puck, shielding the puck with his body. 183 pounds. I just found it. But you get the idea. That's something that the Rangers could certainly use as well. And then we've got Dominic Tiano from the OHL Writers. Jack Nesbitt is a promising young talent with the potential to make an impact in the NHL. His combination of size, skating ability, hockey IQ, there it is again, hockey IQ, and playmaking skills makes him an attractive prospect for teams looking to bolster their center depth. And, on one hand, he's a center, and the Rangers have a couple of centers, multiple centers locked in for multiple years here. Mika, JT Miller, and who am I forgetting? Trocheck, obviously Trocheck. But there's always ways to make it work. Somebody can change positions. Mika was obviously playing the right wing down the stretch last season. And assuming he's still here next year, which I think he will be because of his full no move clause, I've got Mika Zibanejad. Write this one down in Sharpie. Put him on the right wing with JT Miller, because it was not perfect. Mika's overall season last year definitely left something to be desired, but he did play better when he was on the line with JT Miller. So that's the one thing that I got to have next season as far as the Rangers opening night lineup is concerned. But again, there's always ways around it. Maybe this kid can move to wing at some point if that's necessary. We'll see. But I certainly do like Nesbitt, and if he's still there, again, another one that I really think the Rangers should consider. In just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. We've got one more player to talk about. We talked about a defenseman. We talked about a center. We're going to go ahead and talk about a right winger as well. Not as big as the first two players that we talked about, but he makes up for it in other ways, in particular, his very high compete level. And we will get to that player in just a second. All right, one more prospect to talk about today, and that's going to be Justin Carbonneau, 18-year-old right winger for the Blainville Boys Brand Armada of the QMJHL. And if I'm remembering correctly, our other prospects, I think this is the first QMJHL player that we've discussed. Again, that's just a coincidence, but thought I would just throw it out there. But 6'1", 191 pounds, like I mentioned just a second ago, doesn't necessarily have the same size as the other two players that we've talked about here today, but certainly not a small player either. and known as a strong power forward. And again, you've already got my attention as a Ranger fan right now, based on what we saw last season, because there just wasn't enough of that. There wasn't enough guys that were willing to mix it up, go into the dirty parts of the rink, and play a power forward game. But anyway, Carbonneau is said to have a high hockey IQ. There it is one more time today. High hockey IQ to go along with having a lot of grit as well. Just a very gritty player, very well-rounded player with a 200-foot game. This was his third season with Armada, and the first thing that's going to catch your eye is the scoring ability and the way that his scoring has jumped from one season to the next. First season with Armada, 5 goals, 13 assists in 30 games. Second season, 31 goals, 28 assists for a total of 59 points in 68 games. And then this season, I mean, he went off 62 games, 46 goals, 43 assists for a total of 89 points in 62 games. That 89-point total put him at number 2 in the entire QMJHL in terms of, players with the most points, second in the league. 37 of those points came on the power play, which is not a bad ratio, because that would mean, doing some quick math here, 57 points not on the power play. And I feel like there's times where, whether it's Ranger fans or just general hockey fans, there's like a tendency to kind of like brush aside points on the power play as if they don't count or something. But however you might feel about that, you can't label this kid a power play merchant. Yes, he's got a lot of points on the power play. He's got a hell of a lot of points in general. So obviously he's a strong power play performer as well and can get the job done at 5v5. He was also a plus for the first time in his career in the QMJHL. He was a +3 to be exact. In 16 total playoff games for his QMJHL career, he's got 6 goals and 5 assists in those games. Fun fact, I stumbled upon an article today from the hockeywriters.com that listed 4 potential targets at number 12 for the New York Rangers. And I'm, preparing for this episode, and, I Googled Carbonneau's name, and this is one of the articles that came up. And I'm wondering, I wonder how many Ranger potential targets are in this article. As it turns out, we've talked about all of them. Carbonneau was the last one here today, but it mentioned Roger McQueen, who we talked about. It mentioned Lyndon Lakovich, who we talked about, and it mentioned Brady Martin, who we also discussed in a previous episode. So I guess we're sort of on the same page as the hockey writers in terms of, who might be available and what the Rangers might need, the type of player that they should go after at number 12 in the draft. But regardless, back to Carbonneau here. Said to not necessarily be the flashiest player in the draft, and at times does struggle with his defensive positioning. Sometimes he can rush things when he's got the puck. He almost plays a little bit too fast for his own good. But the consensus that I'm getting, again, going by the pro scouts out there, is that he is one of the safer picks in the NHL draft this year. Should be able to settle into a middle 6 role pretty easily in the NHL. Very well-rounded player, and somebody that might be a little bit more NHL ready than certain other prospects that we've discussed, and just other prospects in general that will be available in this year's draft. So that's good to know as well, because the last part that I talked about there, the fact that he is, NHL ready, or seems to be more NHL ready than other players, because the Rangers right now, they seem determined to continue to attack this window right now, the window that had them just a year ago as the President's Trophy winners, but that obviously did not stay open for this last season. They seem to think that they can still go for it. They seem to think that they're still contenders. Every move that they've made points to an aggressive retooling and a reloading as opposed to a full-fledged rebuild. So getting a player like this that could be more NHL ready than some of the other prospects, it kind of lines up with what the Rangers are doing. Like, I don't think we'll see him this upcoming season. I don't think there's any chance, but maybe he'll be ready a little bit quicker to join the NHL than some of the other players that might be available around number 12 this year for the Rangers. So he's interesting for that reason as well. But again, another player that is said to have a very high compete level. And as we know, that should be a given. But we also are very well aware that it's not necessarily a given. Two-way forward, good shot, plays physical, plays very strong along the boards. I like hearing that as well, because again, that's another thing that we didn't see nearly enough of from the Rangers this year. It felt like they would go games at a time without winning a 50-50 puck. But very good speed, good in transition, and a good special teams player as well. Like I said, very well-rounded, very safe pick here. Maybe he doesn't have the upside that some other players do, or the flashiness or the wow factor of some other players, but I think you're getting a very well-rounded player that can help the Rangers or any team that picks him in a lot of different ways. So an interesting prospect for that reason alone. But I'll leave you guys with a couple of scouting reports as well. We've got Sam Cosentino from Sportsnet, his skating stride could be a little more compact and efficient, but he gets to where he needs to go on time. He's strong on his stick, yet still has soft hands to protect pucks and make plays. And then we've got Stephen Ellis from the Daily Faceoff. Carbonneau's game has a lot of high-end attributes. Great skater, check. Excellent shot release, absolutely. A bit of an edge at times, you bet. Carbonneau loves to make big, flashy, high-end plays and often comes out on the right side of it. That one was interesting to me too, because most of the scouts seem to believe that he doesn't have a whole ton of flash to his game, but they're not going to always agree on everything. Be that as it may, again, this is all painting the picture of somebody that has a very well-rounded game. And we'll do one more here. Jason Bukala from Sportsnet. Carbonneau is a crafty playmaker with outstanding puck touch. He makes plays in tight quarters over opponent sticks and through their skates. He consistently plays to his identity offensively. His battle game and secondary pushback is improving. Battle game, yes. Give me all of that, because battling and the Rangers were not two words that you heard all that often together this past season. And again, I'll just leave it at that. I tried not to take as many swipes as possible as I could at the New York Rangers in this episode. But when you're looking at these players and you're reading these scouting reports, and it's just kind of like, yep, there's something the Rangers don't do well. Yep, there's something that they need to improve. Yep, there's something that evaporated last season that was there the season before that. You kind of can't help yourself. But be that as it may, again, I like all three of these players, and that mock draft is on the way. It takes some serious homework to really feel like you're ready for that one, but I think I'm getting pretty close, and definitely looking forward to getting that episode out there for you guys. As I mentioned, we'll probably do more than one. I think we'll do at least 2 mock drafts in the build up to the real thing, the genuine article, the NHL draft this season. But we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.